Yesterday, I specifically said no tears. I did not even get to that back door and I hear Holly say, "Oh, I'm about to cry." I just walked on out the door. I have left it in the hands of Miss Veda today. And I know she's going to do just fine, and she's not going to make anybody cry, and I know you're going to do a wonderful job. But we thank y'all for being here. When y'all get through eating, hey, Miss Sherry, how are you? It's good to see you. If y'all want any desserts, there's some cake back there on the table. Y'all get first dibs before the guys come in, so help yourself. Forks are back there. Just enjoy, okay? We'll see you, I'll see y'all tonight. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Stacy.
Well, it's wonderful to see all of you here this afternoon, and you have a treat in store for you. Anytime Irene Taylor is teaching the class, we know we're going to have a good lesson, and we look forward to it. And Irene, you may know all this, but I'll just go ahead and say it. She's married to Robert. It says of 63 years, and she has two children, Rebecca Davis and Tim Taylor, and she has written 4 books, Standing in Awe, or 3 maybe, Standing in Awe, a biography of Robert Jr., Through the Eye of Joy, and Pearls of Poetry, and her lesson today is on restoring contentment. And that's something I know we all could use. I had this, she's written, as I said, she's written 3 books, and this one, Through the Eye of Joy, on the back of it, it has a biography of her and says she's from Idaho, and she was one of 8 children reared on a farm. And her father died when she was 5 or 6 years old, and her mother raised the children. So then she went to Freed-Hardeman College, and she met Robert, and they've been workers in Tennessee ever since. And she is just, Irene is a delightful person. She's a wonderful friend. She has a good sense of humor, and she anytime she has an assignment, she puts study into it, and we appreciate her so much. All right, we'll have a prayer, and then I'll turn it over to Irene. Our Father in heaven, we're thankful for each lady who's here this afternoon. Help us as Sister Irene leads us in a study of thy word about contentment, and help us to be content even when we have troubles in life. And we're thankful for each lady that's here today, and give each one a safe, if they're traveling this afternoon and this evening, give each one a safe trip home. And we're thankful for this lectureship. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Veda. Veda mentioned that I grew up in a rather large family. I was the next to the youngest, and I was the youngest of 5 girls, and I had a brother, 2 brothers, one who deceased before I was born, and the youngest. The older and younger were the boys. They all liked to pick on me, and I kept saying to my husband when we first married, I said, just wait till we get home. My mother will take up for me. She always came to my defense. Well, we went home, and guess who charmed my mother and ruined her to where she took up for him over me? Yeah, I've been disillusioned ever since. It's great to be here, ladies. And haven't these ladies here done a marvelous job of serving us the food? And aren't we thankful to those congregations who help provide the food? If you've ever been involved in a program like this, you know what work that is, but it's a work of delight on the part of these ladies. And we really appreciate it. And I'd like for us to all let them know how much we appreciate it, because they deserve our thanks. When I was looking at the program in brushing up last night, I glanced down and I thought, I wish I'd had this program and all the assignments that preceded this last lecture for the ladies' classes. I probably would have taken a different approach than I'm prepared to take. Because if you look at the topics assigned to the women, we started off with submission. And ladies, it takes submission to God's law before we'll ever hope to achieve contentment. And then we had joy. Joy comes from being submissive to God's law, does it not? How can you be happy if you're not in compliance and submission to God's law? Then we had a lesson on commitment. And it takes that commitment to God's law before we can hope to reach the goal of contentment. Then we had a lesson on Bible study. And if we're going to receive contentment, we're going to have to study the Bible and learn how to achieve that contentment. Then we had a session on courage. And who among us would deny that it takes great courage to live the Christian life? The rewards are great, but the trials come. And God tests us, and it takes courage to meet that challenge and overcome it. We heard a lesson on quietness. And I appreciated Tisha's thrust on quietness comes with the proper use of the tongue. She stepped on the toes of everyone in that class, your current speaker included. We can't have contentment when we're stirring up trouble. And when we gossip, when we talk against the church, whatever the wrong use of the tongue might be, we can't have contentment with that. Then we heard a lesson this morning on the calm after the storm. And ladies, the storm is going to come in some form in everyone's life. And that's another test that God gives us. And the way we win contentment is governed by the way that we react to those storms in our life. It's not if we have storms, ladies. It's when we have storms. You know, we can have just a little minor storm. It may rain a little, wind may blow a little. We can handle those small storms easily. But it's when we have those big tornadoes, when we have those hurricanes, that we're challenged to handle those storms and come through them, still believing in God and still achieving the quietness of the Christian life. We need the foundation of all the things that we talked about this week to help us through those storms. And when we have gone through all those steps, then we finally are in position to talk about contentment in the Christian life. One of the blessings of the Christian life is that opportunity that we are afforded to enjoy real contentment. You know, we can have temporary contentment, We may be perfectly happy one moment, and that storm comes then. What are we going to do? We in the Christian life have a foundation that helps us weather those storms and helps us achieve that contentment. Contentment is the ability to be peaceful and content with our walk in life, of being happy with what our life is. And that includes the storms as well as the good times. We can still come out on top with contentment. Well, we have a misunderstanding, I think, many, many times of what real contentment is. Sometimes I hear people who face those storms in life complain that they have such a hard life. They don't have that contentment that comes from clinging to the foundation. And I so appreciated Terry's lesson this morning where she emphasized that you need to lean on that foundation of contentment and battling those storms by staying faithful to God. But contentment is not achieved by an absence of problems. You know, many times we think when the problems come into our lives that there's no hope of contentment, but there is. It's up to us. Someone has truthfully said, you can be about as happy as you make up your mind to be. You can either look at the negative side of life and everything goes wrong, nothing fits in, or you can be the optimist who leans on God, who sees that good can come out of even the bad things of life, and you can be content. Some examples of contentment that I immediately thought of. Number one, I thought of that Shunammite lady. Remember when Elisha was traveling through their country? She noticed him making his trips, and she invited him in for hospitality. She fed him bread, which meant she gave him the meal. And after he had made several trips through there, she beseeched her husband to let's build a room for him, that he'll have a place to stay when he comes. And so they built a room and furnished it. And they put in it the necessities to make him comfortable as he came through their area. They put in a bed, a table, a stool, and they also put in a candlestick to give him light. You know, they didn't have an electricity where they could flip a light and hope it came on. But they afforded him the comforts that he needed as he traveled to their area. Elisha wanted to do something to show his appreciation. And folks, when things do nice things for us, we do need to show our appreciation. Oh, we may not be able to build a room, but we can show kindness to them. We can show them how much we are grateful for what they do for us. But Elisha wanted to do and he did something for her, and he didn't know exactly what to do. And so he sent his servant to talk to the lady. And he said, would you like to have an audience with the king? That would have been quite an honor. And would you like to have an audience with the captain of the army, the head of the military? And I've reflected many times on her answer. She said, I dwell among my own people. Now, ladies, that was contentment. How many of us, if we were given the opportunity to be in the audience of the Queen of England or the head of state of some country, whether we agree with our current president or not, we have respect for the office of the presidency, how many of us would turn down an invitation to be honored in some fashion? This woman didn't want anything but the contentment of being with her own people. And you know, that's how we Christians ought to feel about being with our sisters and brothers in Christ. There's nothing more contentment induced than being with Christian people. I'm happy to dwell among our own people, meaning our fellow Christians. The absence of problems in and of itself does not build contentment. Some of the happiest people that I know of are those who have little, but they're happy and contented with what they have. Some of the most miserable people I've ever known have been millionaires who didn't trust other people. They were suspect of the relationship of everyone for fear the money was all they were after. Can you imagine going through life with that attitude? Well, Paul knew what contentment was. He knew that it was not the absence of problems. Paul declared, "Not that I speak of want, for I have learned," and I want you to pick up on that, "I have learned in whatsoever state I am in, therewith to be content." Ladies, we can learn contentment. It's not something that is inherent in us. We have to learn how to be contented. And I hope that we stop and think about the different steps that it takes to be contented. And I think the choice of our topics for the ladies' class this week show some of those steps that we need to take. Paul's life makes it clear that he was not without troubles. We have to have a proper mindset in order to go through life facing those problems and troubles and still learn that contentment. We read about Paul's work for the master and all the problems that he faced. He says he was often in danger, even enduring threats on his own life. He knew weariness and want. Have we ever really been without the basic necessities of life? Well, Paul says there were times when he even lacked those basic needs of life. 2 Corinthians 11, 24 through 27. But in spite of all this, he could still declare that he was content. What an example he is for us today. I've learned in whatsoever state I'm in therewith to be content. In Hebrews 13:5, we read the statement, "Let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as you have." Ask yourself, and we need to ask, each one of us to ask ourselves, are we envious of what the others have? Or are we content with the things that we have? You know, I've used this illustration many times in speaking. We're too prone to want to achieve the status that the Jones have. And I've always wanted to meet those Joneses. I can't believe that with all that we attribute to them, that they're a bit happier than we Christians can be. But we emphasize too much the achievement of material things. We want to keep up with the best of the others, materially speaking. But that's not where contentment comes. Does this mean that we shouldn't try and upgrade our status? Well, we ought to always want to do better, as long as it does not deprive us of doing the good that we're supposed to do as Christians. We ought to want to concentrate on doing better in the Christian life. You know, the achievement of things and the betterment here in this world need never to take away from the work and the good that we can do in Christ's life. When we do better here below, let's make sure we do it lawfully. And that's the only way that it can really bring us contentment. We need to work hard to achieve the proper walk toward heaven. We ought to always be working to achieve a better status in our Christian life. The wise man advises that whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with all thy might. This is one of the big steps that we take toward contentment. Contentment is achieved by building upon the foundation of complete trust in God. And until we can have that kind of trust, we're not going to know true contentment. The psalmist wrote in various verses, "O my God, I trust in thee. Let me not be ashamed. Let not my enemies triumph over me. It is better to trust in the Lord than to put my confidence in men. Thy word have I hid in my heart, that I might not sin against thee. Oh, how love I thy law. It is my meditation all the day." That's found in Psalms 25:2, 118:8, 119:11. Our meditation and our walk toward contentment needs to be built on that trust in God. Paul sums up the real basis for contentment in the Christian life. He concludes in Hebrews 13:5 with these words, "For he has said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee." What security and comfort that is. How can we know real joy without that trust in God? And how can we not enjoy real contentment, knowing that if we remain true and dedicated to God's commandments, we will always have Him to hold our hands and sustain us? What more could we ask here below? How much happier could we make ourselves? Nothing here in this world can give us the contentment and the trust and the security that we have in God. If we seek true contentment, we're going to walk daily by His side. It's not a one-time thing. It's not something we put on for Sunday and we leave off for the rest of the week. It's because we walk daily with Him. And if there's ever a change in that relationship, ladies, as one of the speakers before said, it's not because God moved, it's because we leave God. We need to put the blame where the blame is. You know, so many times when problems come into life that upset our walk toward God, we blame Him instead of putting the blame where it belongs. We need to understand that it's no longer a question of achieving contentment on the world's basis, but as God would have us to achieve it. There are some areas specifically that I wanted to discuss. In order to have contentment, complete contentment, we need to build contentment in the home. You know, this is the first, something's just bugging me. We need to understand God's plan for the home. And when we have contentment in the home, we are well on our way toward achieving contentment that God intended for us to have. It's no longer what I want. It's now what is good for us. And that us includes not only our husband, but when children come along, they need to have a consideration. There's only one way that contentment can reign in the home, and that is when both husband and wife are Christians, dedicated to following His plan, and when our children are reared in a godly fashion to become Christians. There are going to be problems arise from time to time, but couples can work it out. Notice I emphasize couples. One person alone cannot achieve contentment in the home. That's impossible. It takes the worth of both. And I think sometimes we forget that. But if you read about the arrangement of the home that God made, it takes two. And it doesn't take just any two. As Tara mentioned, it's not two men. It's not two women. It's not one of either sex and numerous others of whatever sex. It's one man for one woman for life. I think the downfall of Solomon was because he wavered from that standard. And anytime we waver from that standard in the home today, there's not going to be contentment. The relationship in the home is built on lasting love. It's built on the platform of what I can do for my spouse, not what he is going to do for me. I like to always refer back to Proverbs 31. Notice the relationship between the husband and wife there. You don't see any jealousy anywhere in that relationship. We're told that he is known among the gates in verse 23. She's not jealous of him. The chapter tells us that she does him good and not evil all the days of his life, of her life. He knows he can trust in her. He knows that when he's gone, she's looking well to the ways of the house. I chose when my husband first began holding meetings, and he didn't hold that many when our children were little, because he felt responsibilities toward his family and rearing those children, as well as doing other works of the Lord, and never discount that when you rear your children to love God, you're doing God's work. And I would encourage you mothers to be content with less than the highest standard of living as the world sees it, and take care of your children at home. Rear them and train them. I don't care how good a person you find to fill in for that training. They're not going to train your children as you want them trained. You asked God for those children, and God sent them. Even if you didn't ask for them when you married, you knew there was a possibility of receiving those children. Live up to your commitment and train them as you would have them live. The husband in the ideal home respects the wife, and she respects and loves him. Her children respect her. We have to be careful how we rear our children. I'll have a little more to say about that when we talk about the parent-child relationship. But I think it says a lot when the end of the chapter, it talks about the husband praises her. If you conduct yourself as a God-given, God-fearing wife, your husband is going to be able to give you that respect. And if he lives his life as God intended, then she's going to be able to give him the respect he needs. In the home atmosphere that is described in Proverbs 31, neither companion is going to give false accusations toward the mate. It saddens me that we are seeing that happen too many times, even in the Lord's church, where one mate, out of jealousy or whatever other reason, will make terrible false accusations against the companion. He knows they're not true, but he spreads it all around and tries to ruin her reputation. That's totally unchristlike. True love doesn't permit such. It's understood that there's a chain of authority in the home, and I want to talk about that just a little bit, because that chain helps to build the contentment that is to be desired in that home as well as in our Christian life. We know that God set that chain. The chain is only as strong as the weakest link. And when one link is weak, then contentment goes out the door. If one link is twisted out of shape, there is no more strength in that reunion, in that chain. We know God's law says the man is the head of the woman. Christ is the head of the man. God is the head of Christ. That's simple, it seems, but it's hard to follow. God intended for man to be the protector. Christ gave his life for the church. We're the bride of Christ. God intends for the husband to be the protector of the wife. And as such, he's not to abuse her. If he conducts himself as God intends, then she can respect him as the head of the home. The wisdom of God has given us instructions for each family member. And if we're wanting to have contentment in our Christian life, we need to follow God's plan. Anytime we deviate from God's plan in every aspect of life, we are hurting our chance for contentment. God knew the attitude of man. He knew the attitude of women, and therefore he gave us commands on how we should act. You know, contented marriages don't just happen. It takes work. But it takes work on the part of both members in that family, both the husband and the wife. As I said before, one person alone can't do it. Some years ago, in fact, it was his very first book, which is still my favorite and my pride and joy. My husband wrote Christ in the Home. We tried to establish our home on the basis of Christ being the head of the home. It takes him in that position in order to have the contentment that we can enjoy in the home. To the wives, God says, and we're all familiar with this, I'm not telling you anything new, but I think we need to reiterate God's plan for the home. These young people growing up need to understand what God means for the home and the contentment and happiness it can bring. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. The older I live, the more I can see the wisdom of admonishing to submit yourselves to your own husband. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church and the Savior of the body. I'm glad some of these young girls had to use water too. Therefore, as as the church is subject to Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. That's in the ideal situation. We know there are exceptions where the husband makes it impossible for you to be in subjection to him, because it keeps her from being in subjection to her Lord. The husband is also given instructions. You know, God never put it all on one person. The husband has his responsibilities. He is to love his wife, even as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word. Dropping on down, it says, after describing Christ's relationship to the church, it says, so ought men also to love their wives. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. For no man ever yet hateth his own flesh, but he nourishes and cherishes it, even as Christ the church. Notice that each half of the couple, has responsibilities. When one half misinterprets his or her role and refuses to properly nourish and cherish the other, he has sinned. She has sinned. One party to a marriage cannot bring contentment alone. I summed up our relationship in the home with this statement. To be contented, we need to understand that subjection from the wife is partner to protection from the husband. If we each one fill our roles, then we'll have a happy home. But in too many cases, disharmony is placed entirely on the husband's headship and the wife's subjection. We ignore the nourishing and the cherishing that is the responsible of the mate. It's only by compliance with God's law that we can achieve contentment in the home. And if we don't have contentment in the home, it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, for us to have contentment to the fullest degree in our Christian life. The mental and most emotional abuse that we see in some homes is sad indeed. Thus, in the garden of marriage, the flower of contentment is allowed to wither and die because it doesn't have the proper nourishment. Selfishness sometimes elevates to violence. If you doubt that, turn on the television. Read the articles in the local paper. It's frightening to see the treatment that is meted out in the guise of love. Then there's the parent-child relationship, and it's part of the requirement in the home as well. Any relationship is not one-sided. And we need to remember that, and I know this looks really good on the camera. Parents also have a God-given responsibility in the child-parent relationship. We need to practice discipline in dealing with our children. We need to train them with love, but we need to be sure that we're not discouraging that child. The Bible tells the father to train up in the child in the way he should go. When he is old, he'll not depart from them. The wise man also says, chasten thy son while there is hope, and let not thy soul spare for his crying. Withhold not correction from the child. Correct thy son, and he shall give thee rest. He shall give thee delight to thy soul. That's found in Proverbs 22:6, 19:18, 23:13, 29:17. There's a caveat issued regarding the administration of discipline. All discipline needs to be given in love. All of it needs to be fair and balanced. Why do I say that? I observe couples when I'm out in the community, It distresses me to see a parent just jerk a child one way and jerk a child the other, and the child may not necessarily be doing anything but child curiosity. There's a calm way of handling that. We do need to train them, yes, but there's a calm way of doing it. Don't scream at your children. Don't scream at them. We scream at them and then we're shocked when they scream back. You're teaching them to do that. You need to calmly but firmly calm them down, train them properly. I know sometimes we're going to raise our voice in emphasis, but we don't need to scream. Remember, the way they see you act toward them is going to be reflected in the way they act and feel toward you. You can rear God-fearing children, but we need to mete out that discipline with love and kindness. The passage in Ephesians 6 tells fathers not to provoke your children to wrath. I don't think that was meant just for fathers. He's the head of the home, and so he can set the example. But I think we need not to provoke our children to wrath. We need to train them, but training isn't provoking them. A proper example goes a long way in teaching our children the beauty of contentment in the home. Then there's a contentment with the neighbor. As Christians, we'll never know real contentment until we learn how to get along with our neighbor. We need to remember whose family we represent. We represent the family of God. If you're the type of neighbor who is always cranky, hard to get along with, who is not friendly, who is rude, that's the image that they have of the church. You're representing the church and God's body. We need to be careful how we represent ourselves and the church. A certain lawyer asked one time, "Who is my neighbor?" Luke 10:29. And then we know that Jesus gave the parable of the Samaritan. Remember that two religious people passed by and did not offer help, but that good Samaritan came along. We are supposed to help those who are less fortunate than we are. Matthew 10:42 and James 1:27. We gain contentment from knowing that we're obeying God's command. Our conduct in public reflects not only our own character, but the character of the church. It reflects on our influence and tells what kind of influence the Lord has on our life. As I said, when we're unfriendly, when we're rude, when we're sharp-tongued, when we're careless in our dress or our activities, we're robbing ourselves of contentment, and we're robbing the church of the proper image. It's not just you that's important. Who you represent determines a lot of what your responsibility is. Let's don't make people look down upon the church. Let's don't bring shame to God's name. No real contentment can be found in that. Contentment accrues from a regular adherence to the golden rule. How would you like to be treated? Have you ever asked yourself that? How do I want others to treat me? Then that's how I should treat them. Do I like for others to unfairly judge me? Then don't unfairly judge them. Don't develop the attitude of criticism. We judge people by their fruits, But let's don't just tear them apart by unfair criticism. Contentment comes when we do God's will, when we let Him control our heart, which is the mind, when He controls our conduct and our conversation. Therefore, all things whatsoever ye would do that others do unto you, do ye even so to them also. Matthew 7:12, Luke 6:31. The foundation for contentment is real. Do I have time left? A real right relationship that brings contentment is the relationship that we build with God. We build on that foundation by learning to control our thoughts, our tongue, and our daily conduct. I don't know about you, but the area that I have to work the hardest is controlling my tongue. It's so easy to say hurtful things, maybe not realizing that you're saying hurtful things. It's so easy to judge and talk about others when you don't have all the facts. We unfairly judge when we have just one-sided information. There may be things going on in that person's life that we will never have the need to see. But I'm so grateful that God's not the judge. We need to work hard. Philippians 4:8 gives a marvelous formula for how to control our thoughts and our conduct and our tongue. Of course, if you want a passage to tell you how to control your tongue, read James 3 every day. But the passage in Philippians says, finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. Fill our mind with the good things, and our good conduct will follow. Contentment is always in good company. It's not found with the base elements of life, nor is it found in the good elements of the world. That doesn't bring about the real contentment that we seek. It's not found in food and shelter, in raiment, or even in our livelihood. When we achieve all of these, there's still that missing link. We still haven't achieved contentment. But the Bible tells us in 1 Timothy 6:6, but godliness with contentment is great gain. And until we include that godliness in our chain, we have a missing link. God is the one who brings about contentment. And only when we include that chain, that link, is our chain complete. I want to close by reading the poem that I wrote several years ago. And I know I probably bore you by including a poem many times at the end of my lesson. That's my method of summarizing the lesson. And I went back in my little poetry book and found this that I had included, and I thought it went along with our lesson. Contentment is a concept that conjures up a glow. It's something that a Christian should really, really know. And yet, sometimes it passes and easily slips by while we are busy doing things to gain pie in the sky. We seem to fail to realize the truth of God's own way. We turn our hearts to worldly things, ignoring what He'd say. The things for which we work so hard, a house, a car, a boat, will fade each time in time so quickly. How Satan must truly gloat. Contentment is within our reach if we choose to obey God. If heavenly riches become our goal instead of earthly sod. For things can never bring the happiness we desire. We must turn from Satan away to avoid his home of fire. Seek after things which matter, the things that will not rust, the things of life hereafter if in God we put our trust. Contentment comes from serving God, not the pleasures of the day. The godliness with which it's linked will happier make our way. So cast aside those worldly goals and cast your eyes above. Know God, His Son, the Spirit, and the beauty of His love. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Sister Irene. That was a wonderful lesson, and we'll pray that we all will learn godly contentment. And thank you all for coming. God bless you. Give you safe trips until we meet again. You're dismissed. It's very good.
Hey, girls. I like these hugs.
I did a Devo once for a camp that I went to, and I used 2 of your poems.
Well, bless you. That makes me feel real proud.